Hello and welcome to our first Outside In podcast, Inside, Outside In. I'm Mark Steen, the founder and director of Outside In, and we are an award-winning charity that helps artists who face significant barriers to the art world due to health, disability, social circumstance, or isolation. We currently support over 3,000 artists, and our work covers three main areas: artist development, exhibitions and training, all with the aim of creating a fairer art world. Over our first series of podcasts, we'll be meeting some of our artists, talking to some of our friends and partner organisations in the art world, and reviewing exhibitions and events. We hope you will join us on our journey as we take you inside, outside, in. The haunting voice you've just heard is that of Outside In artist Bebo, and we will shortly be hearing from her and two other Outside In artists about their work and their experience of lockdown. Later on, you can hear artist Tanya Rob Weber talking to Justin Edgar about his controversial exhibition, Reasonable Adjustment. But first, we're very pleased to welcome a very special guest, a good friend of Outside In, and an artist that needs no introduction. It's Grayson Perry, everyone. Hi, Grayson.
Hello.
Hello again. Thank you for all your support for Outside In and our artists. It's very much appreciated. And to be a part of our new podcast, Inside, Outside In. So we've known each other a little while, and we've asked our artists if they have any questions they'd like to ask you. And we have our wonderful communications coordinator, Matt, who's going to be asking questions on our artist's behalf. And
Right, okay.
Yeah, you happy with that, Grayson?
Oh, I'm extremely happy, yeah.
Brilliant. Hello, Grayson. Hello. How are you?
I'm good, yeah, I'm alive. I'm alive and looking at a blue sky.
It's always cheering, isn't it? Bit of nice weather. So thank you so much for joining us as a very, very special guest on our first Outside In podcast. And as Mark said, we've had a lot of questions sent in from artists. They've been very excited to send questions in. So we'll get onto those immediately. But just before, there was also another thing that so many people sent in, which was just to say a big, huge, enormous thank you for Art Club. It's meant so much to so many people. So many of our artists have enjoyed getting involved with it and sending you work and sending you postcards and thank yous and things. So lots and lots of love being sent and thank yous being sent for that. It's been such a beacon of positivity and creativity during lockdown.
Did any of your artists manage to get on the programme?
Well, yes, a couple of them have, yes. So that's great as well, and very excited about that. And we last met at the last physical exhibition that Outside In had, which was just before lockdown, Environments in King's Place, where you very kindly agreed to come along and be one of the judges. And I just wondered what your memories were of that evening and being mobbed by our artists and seeing some of their artwork.
No, I had a lovely time. I mean, it's I like Also, I like art that's done by people who aren't necessarily part of the art world. I like to see what they're up to, and I remember very distinctly who we gave the prize to.
Alan, yeah, Paler.
Who did the kind of felt tip? And I remember having conversations about, oh dear, felt tips. They're a bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Fungible. Yeah. And I also remember I was wearing PVC trousers that were quite hot.
You were indeed very hot in all senses. And you'll be pleased to know, actually, Grayson, that Alan's exhibition, it did become a victim of lockdown, so we had to cancel it. But we've managed to get new dates for it. So that's going to be happening now in March next year at the Phoenix Gallery in Brighton. So we'll be sending you an invite.
Great.
Nice.
Okay.
Brilliant. So questions, so many questions, so little time. Our first question is from artist Jason Pape. And Jason has said that he is inspired by horses, cows, kangaroos, and seals, and by your temple to Julie Cope, and his sister is called Julie as well. And he would like to ask which animals inspire your amazing artwork and why.
Oh, well, I suppose the one I've used the most is the cat because of Kevin. I'm a cat person.
Okay.
Dogs. I've had dogs when I was young, but then I kind of graduated onto cats because I think cats are the more intelligent, option. Dogs are dogs are really like sort of quite dim children, aren't they? Sort of, they just do what you tell them to do.
Eager
Whereas
to
cats,
please.
yeah, they're sweet, but cats are a superior being, Yeah, I mean, well, animals, nature on the whole, I find quite uninspiring. It's like a nice warm bath. You get in it, but you don't want to stay there too long, and most of the ideas you have in a warm bath are a bit rubbish anyway. So I don't tend to focus on nature. I mean, I'm a person who's interested in society and human beings. Sometimes I've drawn roadkill. I like the symbolic aspect of I like the symbolic aspect of animals. I might draw an eagle if I was thinking about America.
Some lovely foxes we had the other day, didn't we, on Art Club as well?
Oh yes, foxes. That was true. That was on Nature Week. I do like Mr. Urban Fox. Yeah, I mean that is a cheering. And I was on the way to work today. I saw a parakeet as well. Ooh. Because they're quite common now in London around where my studio is, and I like them because they're sort of bright and fast and noisy. They're a bit like me.
Brilliant. So next question. It's from Ash, and Ash says, "Hello, Grayson. What emotion inspired your favourite piece of art, and were you trying to convey that emotion visually?"
Yeah, well, for a start, I always say I always say that my favourite art is the next piece I'm making.
Next one, yeah.
Yeah, so, and often, the emotion I probably go to the most is kind of anger. It's like things that irritate me. That's often a starting point for any of my, things, is because I think it's, and I find it funnier. I find humour and anger quite useful tools in getting me excited about something.
Yes.
I take it for granted that I love everything I do. Emotionally, yeah. I mean, emotions are quite complex. I mean, when you're making things, because there'll be a whole mixture of emotions, I should imagine. But anger is definitely one that gets me out of bed in the morning. It's probably only mild irritation though, rather than fury.
Brilliant. Okay. So next one, is it true, this is from Jonathan, it's a bit rude, this question, is it true you sometimes used to be nude in nightclubs with only body paint on?
Yes, I was a kind of, not peripheral member, my girlfriend was one of the three women who kind of were the mainstay of a group called the Neo-Naturists in the 80s mainly, though they're still sort of knocking about. We used to do performances in nightclubs. We brought the tedium and pretentiousness of performance art to the masses in nightclubs, mainly by kind of bad singing, bad poetry, bad cooking, and body paint, I would say. That's my appraisal of it. I'm sure they wouldn't be quite so harsh on it, but, you know, it was fun. We had fun and we got into nightclubs for free and then ended up walking about the dance floor, rubbing body paint off on everybody's nice clothes.
Next question from David Jones, quite a deep, meaningful one as well. Has art saved you in a solo sense, being alone, self-lost, soul-searching at the crossroads? Or have you saved art because of Art Club on Channel 4, which has been and is bringing out the best in people?
Well, I certainly wouldn't say I've saved art. I think that would be incredibly hubristic of me to even imagine.
Oh, go on, you can if you like.
No, I don't think so, because, you know, I think art is many multi-layered and has many players in it in different levels. So there's all different sorts of art worlds. And, you know, maybe I do kind of encourage a kind of aspect of art that doesn't get enough attention, I think. You know, people, you know, who do it in a less professional way or aren't perhaps involved in the contemporary art world like me. I mean, whether it saved me, I mean, it's a good way when you're as young of kind of putting out stuff that's going on for you, but it's always a conversation between your kind of unconscious and your conscious. And I don't know if it always works in the same way as therapy, unless there's a therapist involved to kind of help you bring it out. You know, it's sort of like therapy is sort of ritualized and it has sort of rules and it's relatively rigorous, whereas just expressing yourself can be a bit vague. I mean, it's nice to do, but I don't know how helpful it is to your kind of... it's a place to go where you kind of lose yourself. That's good. Concentrate on stuff, and maybe, you know, if other people like what you do, then it's good for your self-esteem as well. Yeah. Which it always was, even as a child. You know, I used to be praised for my artwork. So that's a useful aspect of it. Never underestimate a bit of attention and praise.
Oh yes, very important. Very important. And the next question. Before you made it, did you ever think about giving up? And what made you carry on?
Oh, that is a good question. Before I made it, I did think about giving up because I wasn't making that much money, because I was a very slow developer in terms of financially. Even though I always sold my work, I always sold it for not much money. And so, you know, I was struggling in the 80s to make enough money. And I always thought if I didn't make it by the time I was sort of 30, I thought that I would go into advertising, because I thought I'd be good at that and that would be more likely to pay my way. But what kept me going was I always made just enough money to kind of keep me interested in it. And also then I got together with my wife, who was sort of a bit better off than me. And that's what kept me going, really, was she sort of supported me until I started making a decent living out of art, which wasn't until I was in my late 30s, probably.
Right. Well, thank you for that. And how have you coped with lockdown? This is from Lee, this question. Other than being very busy and on TV, thanks for Art Club, by the way, says Lee.
Yeah, Art Club was sort of useful to get, you know, me and Phil through lockdown, but, you know, the rest of the time we just, like everybody else, missing our friends, missing social life, really missing parties, you know, dressing up, having an audience. You know, I need an audience, so I haven't had that. Really looking forward to get back into performing on stage. So yeah, all of those sort of human social needs I've missed hugely. I'm a bit worried how it's going to feel when we go back to having...
Yeah. Might be weird.
Odd. Yeah. It's going to feel weird. Yeah, we're going to have to ease into it, I think.
Yeah, slowly. Yeah. Brilliant. And question from Sue Barnes. Do you know what the latest plans are for your art club shows, the live shows, so the one in Manchester, and you've got another one planned as well, haven't you? But
Yeah, well, the Manchester one will open. I think they can open on May the 12th or something like that. I think it is, and then that will be open until October. So finally, after all these months, people will be able to see it. And we're already in conversations with a couple of galleries in a different part of the country for the second art club exhibition. So that will probably definitely happen. Probably, I don't know whether it'll be this year or early next year. I don't know. Depends on the schedule.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's all in train.
great. We'll look forward to that very much. Next question from Laura. What role do you think art plays in understanding or expressing the everyday? And in particular, have you seen this demonstrated during the pandemic?
The everyday. I mean, one person's everyday is another person's fantastic drama, isn't it? It's like, what is the everyday? If you're a Hollywood superstar, your everyday is pretty weird, I imagine.
Yeah.
And I think,
Very.
and the idea of, ordinary people with ordinary jobs has been shifted during the pandemic, because the people doing the ordinary jobs are suddenly the superstars and important people, the kind of nurses and shelf stackers and delivery guys, these are all essential workers. So I think that's, what is ordinary is a kind of interesting question. And of course, a lot of people, depict their ordinary life in their work, whether they're kind of, amateur, professional artists, whoever. And, a lot of them sent it into. So it's a very general question, that one, because everyday life is all life, surely.
True.
Even an astronaut has everyday life.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Just a question of degree.
I think it's sort of. Does that, there's always an implication in that phrase that, do you mean boring? You can talk about if you talk or paint about anything in the right way, it's not boring. It's all in your process, not the content.
True.
Most
true.
good art is about the process, not the content.
Yeah.
A lot of people get muddled up. They think if they paint something interesting, that it's a good painting. No, it's a good subject. It's a very different thing.
Brilliant. Thank you. A quick fire. How is Alan Measles?
He's all right, he's settling down now after art club.
Good. Have you ever dreamt of a piece of work, then made it?
Yes, I have. I once dreamt of a Tang Dynasty bronze racing car. In therapy, cars came up a lot as a sort of metaphor for my father more than anything. And when I woke up, I had this very clear image of this sort of Chinese ancient bronze racing car. So I made a bronze sculpture of it. Yeah, back in the 90s sometime. Yeah.
Best exhibition you've ever seen?
Well, I've seen a lot of exhibitions. I mean, the one that had the most influence on me was The Outsiders back in the Hayward Gallery, I think. I think that was 78 or 79, I can't remember.
Big thumbs up there from Mark.
Yeah, that was the one that really had the biggest influence on my practice as an artist.
Brilliant. Tea or coffee?
Depends what time of day. Coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon.
Is your house very colourful or quite the opposite?
It's very colourful, yeah. We don't have many white walls. We have a lemon hallway and a pink front room and a blue sitting room, things like that. Yeah, no, we have lots of colour. Yeah, defo. I'm all for colour. I'm not a chromophobe.
Earliest memory?
Earliest memory, God, I don't know, just sitting on the lawn in my house in Broomfield, looking through the fence. I think probably at my neighbour son, who was the same sort of age as me, and he was the person who Alan Measles was named after.
Ah.
Yeah, so that would be about 3 years old, I'd have thought.
Okay. Brilliant. Is Art Club forever?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think Channel 4 would like another series. What form it will take in post lockdown, I don't know. Whether it'd be any different, I don't know. I think it's more likely that it'll certainly go to a third series. I think it's likely. I wouldn't like to say it's definitely going to happen, though. But whether it's forever, I don't know. I mean, they all go off, don't they, these things, after a while. You want to quit while you're ahead.
Brilliant. Do you like dancing? And what always gets you on the dance floor? Which song?
I do like dancing. I don't do it enough. What would get me on the dance floor? Probably a soul record, an old 1960s soul record, something like that. Yeah, that was what would get me. Like, one of my favourites is Wake Up Everybody by Harold Melvin and the Blue Note.
Lovely
I love
song.
that record.
Lovely song.
Teddy Prendergast.
Brilliant song. And finally, sorry, it's an F word question. Favourite artist, living or dead? Or you can have more than one.
Apart from me, obviously, because I always think you're daft if you're an artist. You don't think what you do is the best in the world. I mean, what's the point otherwise? You're just adding to the world's store of bad art, aren't you? Do I have a favourite artist? I change my favourite artist, on a daily basis, really, depending on what I'm looking at, what's inspiring me. I mean, if I think of the one I'd like, I wouldn't mind a Bruegel on my wall.
Right.
I'd say yes to that. If I was going to choose one to have in my front room.
Today's favourite artist is Bruegel, then. We'll leave it.
I think he's consistent. He's a consistent fave of mine.
Okay.
Go back to him, again and again.
Grayson, thank you so much. It's been so wonderful talking to you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for Art Club. We'll keep tuning in.
Radio.
Thank you, Grayson.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Lots of love.
Thank you, Grayson. That was the most interesting and fascinating interview. Now it's time to meet some of our artists and to hear what they have been up to during lockdown. And first of all, we'll be talking to artist Kareen about the extraordinary work created in the confines of her bedroom. Hi, so I'm Mark. I'm director of Outside In, and I'm very delighted to have this chance to speak to you, Kareen, one of our artists. So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are at the moment, that would be fantastic.
So my name is Kareen, and I'm in bed, and I'm wearing a mint wig, glasses. I've got red lipstick. I'm a white female, and I've got like a backdrop behind me that's the sky that I've painted on an old bed sheet, and I'm wearing pajamas with a cloud pattern on them as well.
You look like the most wonderful. You embody something about the sky and peace and calm. It's wonderful. So, Kareen, do you want to tell our listeners a bit about your work and what you do? And that would be wonderful just to hear.
Okay, well, I'm confined to bed every day because I have severe mental illness. So mainly my anxiety just makes it really sort of impossible for me to, get up and have, a normal sort of day-to-day life. So I just sort of find myself here sort of in bed every day, and I take mainly self-portraits from bed.
How did that idea come, Kareen, where you suddenly found the bed as a place to make, where you started trying to realise the outside world in that space?
But then I think it must have been the very end of 2019 that I was just sort of in bed and I was looking through a Frida Kahlo book, and I just, saw a picture of her lying in bed painting, on the special easel that she had made. And I just thought, if she could do it, if she could produce all of that work, with all her problems, with her health and disability, then maybe I could do something that wasn't that bad. I think that's what I thought, and I really just sort of continued since then.
I've sort of, seen your wonderful photographs, your self-portraits, Corinne, on the outside in gallery. I mean, they're very evocative and moving, and you use sort of symbols and trying to. I mean, can you tell me a bit more about them and what their purpose was for you?
Well, recently I've done one with I did like a key. I think we spoke about that before. It's like a key, and it's some sort of in my belly button. And I thought myself it was quite a weird sort of conclusion to come to, and I did wonder what everyone else would think of it. But for me, it's sort of just I'm really shy, and I'm really sort of isolated here, and I just like to be able to sort of unlock myself in a way and not have to deal with all this shyness that I suppose is just it holds me back.
Can you tell me a little bit about why you came to Outside In? And I know you're an ambassador, so perhaps you could talk about that as well.
I think it must have been I think I did apply in 2019, but I was too ill that year to sort of do anything. So I just sort of keep looking, and then I'll be looking, I was looking once a week, and I was just really interested in it and sort of building myself up to it. And then finally at the start of 2020, because the Midlands Hub, obviously started, I was emailing Josie quite a bit about applying for an opportunity that's at Compton Verney for the Signs exhibition. And I couldn't believe it really when I was accepted for that. I just remember I was crying because I was so happy. It was such a big shock.
Thank you. I mean, I heard that you've recently been awarded a residency, a digital residency, is that right, with the New Art Gallery Warsaw? So what does that mean, and what will you be doing?
But it's starting Monday, and every week, I think it will be every Monday and possibly every Friday. They're going to be putting out a post on Instagram on the New Art Gallery Warsaw's Instagram, and I think it will also go on Outside In's at the same time. And really, I'm just going to sort of be turning my bed transforming it into a art installation.
I mean, what I was also, Corinne, when we spoke last, you mentioned you discovered other artists who work in a similar situation to you. Do you want to tell me a bit about that network?
I mean, I sort of had this idea. I've had the idea for a few years now, but obviously I don't know anybody. I didn't have any friends before I joined Outside In. And then I sort of spoke to Josie, the Midlands coordinator, and she's just, well, as you know, she's really lovely, and she sort of supported me. So then I got in contact with a couple of other artists who are on Outside In, and they have sort of similar but different situations to me. They're sort of housebound or bedbound. And so there's 3 of us so far. We haven't thought of a name yet for the collective, but we're just sort of taking it slow, and we're just sort of working towards our first sort of online exhibition together, and it's going to be within a doll's house.
And if there are any other artists out there who might feel that they're connected or can relate to that experience, would you be interested in them getting in touch or finding out about your network?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be really interested, in speaking to other artists in a similar situation. And we are hoping to have, more artists. I mean, we'd like to keep it a small group, but we're open to new members, and eventually we'd really like to sort of exhibit and support other artists who are bedbound or housebound, because I think it's something that a lot of people, because like before lockdown there were so many people that were sort of confined to home, and now everyone's sort of had that experience. Hopefully it's easier for them to sort of relate to us.
That's a very interesting sort of unexpected benefit of the lockdown, isn't it? Where people have been limited to their houses and spaces, and that lack of physical interaction. I'm sure that's something people will definitely be able to have an empathy with, Corinne, going forward. Thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful talking to you and sharing your motivations for your work and the wonderful stuff you do. And recommend everybody who hasn't takes a look at your website and finds out about what you do. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Thanks, Corinne. We're off to Manchester now, talking to artist Dominic Bennett, who's supported by our fantastic partner organisation Venture Arts. Get ready for some bad guys, nightmares, and, oh yes, weasels too. Hi, Dominic. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
We've met before. I'm Mark. I'm the director of Outside In, and I'm so pleased that you've agreed to spend some time talking to us today about your work, your art, and a bit about... It's cool. So, can you tell me a little bit about how long you've been going to Venture Arts?
Since I left school about 8 years ago.
And what do you like best about it?
I like doing art, I like clay and photography and lots of different things. I have made lots of friends and interesting projects.
Do you have a favourite medium, Dominic?
My favourite is clay.
Clay. And what do you make in clay, Dominic?
The clay of making weasels. I'm making weasels out of kits, that sort of thing. Titans.
I saw a video game or something you did for Project X about Weasel Nation. Can you tell me about the video game?
I designed a game based on being new willows, instead taking over Toho. The weasels will take over a home. Lots of people played on the game on a big screen at the exhibition.
And so it's a Weasel Nation. Was it? So the game was about weasels trying to sort of stop Toad. Is that right, or something?
No, it's like you take over home, like smashing up art, messing up stuff. When Super Toad came in and saved the day.
So, Dominic, we're going to be featuring a very cool self-portrait that you've created in our next virtual gallery exhibition. Can you tell me a little bit about the picture?
It's called The Ghost of Dominic, and took pictures of places in Manchester and merged them on a computer using Photoshop.
I think it's remarkable and wonderful. Yeah. So you've got a gallery on the Outside In website, I know. But you've also got one on the Venture Art website. So if people wanted to see more of your work, there's places out there to see it, isn't there?
Definitely. Yeah.
Get in touch with you. I assume they'd get in touch with Venture Arts, Dominic, yeah?
I do, yeah.
You've also got a YouTube channel.
I got my YouTube channel and my film reviews.
And the other thing I think I remember you liking a lot in terms of art is street art and graffiti, isn't it?
Definitely, yes. I'm definitely doing that.
Yeah? What inspires you about street art, Dominic?
Oh, my famous one is Banksy. Banksy's really good.
And why do you like Banksy?
He's a great guy. He's an unknown guy doing graffiti. I want to be like him next.
Yeah, because you're quite like protests and stuff as well, don't you? Do you like the fact that Banksy's protesting, Dominic?
Yeah, I do, all the time.
So what would you protest about?
Well, I will protest about loyalty and respect.
Loyalty and respect. Is there not enough of that, Dominic?
We need people to reach out and do marching around the streets.
Yeah. Or doing more to help each other.
Yeah, like unite. Like I said about the weasels, unite the weasels.
Unite the weasels. I love that. That's wonderful. Uniting the weasels. I'm with you on that one, Dominic. Can I be an honorary weasel? Is that all right?
You're already in, mate.
That has been the highlight of my last, I don't know, 6 months. I'm an honorary weasel, Dominic. I'm delighted. Thank you. So what would you say to people about you and your work? What would you want them to do?
I want them to get out there, start protesting, and start listening to a chief weasel. Proper. Remember, I want loyalty, respect, no more Boris, no more Cena, and no more living, no more superheroes. Batman forever. Protest. So I start protesting. Remember, there's a weasels in all of you. Because you're a weasel nation. Join the nation.
Thank you to Dominic. Now we're off to the Highlands to meet the extraordinary and multi-talented artist Bebo. She's a singer, a performance artist, and more. She and her husband Brian, also an outside-in artist, have been on an incredibly trying journey, but we're pleased today to find them in a happier place. I'm Mark, the director of Outside In, and I'm very pleased to welcome one of our artists, Bebo. Hi, Bebo. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are?
Thank you very much. So my name is Bebo Keeley, and I'm originally from Germany, but I live in Aberdeen in Scotland, and I've lived here for over 10 years.
I can see a lovely stone wall and a sculpture and a few photographs. But Bebo, so tell me a little bit about your journey as an artist, how you came to find Outside In.
My journey of an artist. So in 2012, a friend of my now husband asked if I would sit for her as a model. And I agreed. And as I was sitting in her studio, I was surrounded by this wonderful creativity, and it just felt like home. It just felt like home. That sounds like the right word. Mm-hmm. And if you sit as a model, you're just quiet, you're calm for hours. And I just had this revelation in a totally non-religious sense of the word. And it just came to me, and I thought, well, I am an artist.
2012, 13, and you exhibited in the Outside In exhibition, didn't you, in Perth?
Yes.
In 2014. Yeah. Can you say a little bit about that for us?
Yeah. So in 2013, I had this revelation that I am an artist, and I just totally went for it. I just, I just started making things. I went to every art event that I could find. I got on the waiting list for an art studio, and I found Outside In online. What I loved about it was that everybody is allowed to be an artist, and everybody is welcome. And I felt like that's what you need. Art. I hadn't studied art or anything. I just felt like I am an artist, and I felt like they're welcoming me.
Oh, and you had your piece, I remember the Yamantaka head. Is that right, Bebo, in the exhibition?
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a bit about the head and what it represents and everything?
Yeah. So the very first sculpture I started making was a big mask called Yamantaka, and I had just seen a live performance by Tibetan monks up here in Aberdeen, and I was particularly drawn into the one blue mask they had, and I thought, wow, I'm going to make one of those. And I later found out it's a god who has overcome death. And then the year after, my newfound meaning as an artist totally came to a standstill, because my now husband got very, very ill, and he was in hospital for a long time, and he was on intensive care for 110 days. And during that time, I had the Outside In exhibition in Perth happened, and it was the only time that I went to, and I actually left the hospital and the adjacent hotel where I was staying because we were far away from home. And it was so important for me to be able to go there, because it really was a light in a very, very dark time. I was so proud, and it gave me a buzz, and I had something positive to tell to Brian.
The first thing of yours I saw was your first response to COVID and the lockdown, Bebo, when you sort of did your hair piece. I'm interested to hear about the impact of the lockdown on you and your work. And, you know, if you can tell me a little bit what that's been like for you and Brian.
Yeah, so when lockdown came, all of a sudden we weren't able to use public buildings, and we both had studios. So Brian and I both rented studios in town and from different organizations. But Brian is now a heart transplant recipient. He's always at a higher risk of infection, and any infection can lead to really serious complications. There's always the risk of organ rejection as well. And so for us, it was absolutely not possible to keep using a studio. Now, our creative space is in our front room.
Can I ask you about the fairy cattle I saw in your gallery and a slow walk into the lake or the well? So I'm so curious. So can you tell me some more?
Yeah. So the fairy cattle, I made the fairy cattle out of terracotta clay, and clay is a type of soil. And there's a local lore or a local myth or legend. There's a local legend where the fairy cattle dwelled in the sea, but they came out during the night to graze on the land. But then in the end, a fairy would whistle, and they would all come back running home into the sea. And one day, a man took some soil from a molehill and something else, some soil from a graveyard, I think, and threw it between the cattle and the sea, and they were not able to cross that line. And I thought this was such a horrible thing to do, and I just wanted to make the fairy cattle and bring it home.
Oh. Wonderful, Beaver. Absolutely, I love it. I absolutely love it. What a great story. And I particularly love what's it called? The look, listening, responding device, you know? It reminds me, like, I don't know if you've heard the story about stones that have a hole inside them. If you have a stone with a hole in it, if you look through that hole, you can see the whole fairy world suddenly becomes real, you know? And I love this idea of piercing the realm, you know, seeing other things. So tell me about your device and the impact it had, Beaver, yeah?
So that device was so when Brian was in intensive care, I used to sing to him. I used to come up with a lot of things to try and make him, to cheer him up. I don't know, to make him stronger, to give some of my strength to him. And singing was one of the things which I did to him at the intensive care bed. And Brian and I later did a performance together with another heart transplant couple, actually, where I sang to him, but I used a megaphone, an amplified megaphone, which kind of distorts the sound a little bit. And I sang classical German songs, but through a megaphone. And this was kind of the metaphor for the urgency of the situation. And then as we like a few years on, you know, things smoothed out a little bit. When you're an organ transplant recipient, there's never a point where you can say, now it's over, now I can forget about it, because there's always ongoing monitoring and all the rest of it, all of threats and so on. But I thought, I need something calmer now. I don't need this megaphone anymore. So I built this device to sing through instead, totally analog. And I wanted just to connect with nature. And then as I was connecting with nature by singing through it, I thought to myself, but I'm still just adding something to nature. I'm adding my voice, I'm adding sound. Maybe I don't need to do that. Maybe I can just connect by looking and listening. And I started, once I've built it, I started to use it as my looking and listening device. And the responding only became a part of the whole thing.
I would just say, I'd recommend everybody to go to your gallery on the Outside In website and see the wonderful photographs of you in that wonderful cloak and with the device. It's some beautiful imagery, honestly, and the healing well where you go to. It's remarkable. I mean, beautiful and poignant stuff. Yeah, really.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, see you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, no, thank you. You can hear more from Bibo at the end of the program when she sings for us a beautiful song Alice Seelan by Richard Strauss. Her lament for lost lives in the pandemic. All the artists we have spoken to today have work in our virtual exhibition, Unlocked, which is now live and on our website. Next up, we'll be hearing from artist Tanya Raab Weber in conversation with Justin Edgar about his unique exhibition, Reasonable Adjustment.
I'm Tanya Raab Weber, and I'm a visual artist, a painter, and I'm in my studio surrounded by all my big and little paintings that I've been kind of creating over the lockdown. How about you, Justin?
So my name's Justin Edgar. I'm predominantly a filmmaker, I suppose, but I'm also getting more into visual arts now. I'm sitting here in my home office study. I'm a white man, 49 years old, with slightly greying beard and shoulder-length long hair, and sitting in my lumberjack shirt, looking forward to a relaxing chat with Tanya.
Cool. So you've created this exhibition called the Reasonable Adjustment. Justin, do you want to tell us a bit about the exhibition and how it came about? Give us like a potted history.
It is, yeah. So Reasonable Adjustment is a history of a disabled armed resistance movement who operated in the late 1980s and early 1990s, and they took up arms against an oppressive socio-political climate, particularly the government of Margaret Thatcher and how she oppressed disabled people. And they did things like raiding a live BBC telethon, and other things they did were planting bombs at bus station. They didn't actually kill anybody, a bit like the Animal Liberation Front, but they did cause injury and harm, and generally used violent means in order to bring about change in disability rights. And the key thing we have to remember about Reasonable Adjustment is that they didn't exist. They're completely made up by me. It's sort of based on real disability rights movements such as DAN, Direct Action Network, and inspired by that kind of febrile political atmosphere of the 1980s. And what I wanted to do was posit the question, what if they had happened? Would things be better for disabled people? Would the Disability Discrimination Act have been more effective or less effective? Would people and public opinion and government have railed against disabled people if that had happened? So it was a what-if proposition, I suppose. And a lot of people have said, well, why create a fake movement? And I wanted to provoke people into asking these questions, asking these kind of what-if questions. That was really important to me. I think, actually, one of the interesting things about the exhibition is I didn't think people would think it was as real as it is. A lot of people kind of... we went to great lengths, having said that, to make it real. The idea was if I could convince myself, then I would convince other people, hopefully. But quite a lot of people seem to have thought it was real. Some people think that's great. Some people find it really interesting and anarchic and a bit punk, which it was definitely designed in that spirit. But other people have looked at it and have been kind of a bit annoyed that they've been fooled, I suppose, and they haven't liked that. So yeah, it's had a range of responses.
Yeah, I kind of think that it's really, really interesting to kind of bring this kind of, this debate to the forefront again. Especially, I think that's kind of, for me, that's what this exhibition has done, is kind of released that kind of. We've forgotten about all the chaining ourselves to buses and throwing ourselves across vans, and you've used a lot of looks like footage, which is real footage, haven't you? Is that right? In
some of it, yeah.
Yeah. It kind of mixed in with some kind of with some invented footage. So kind of where does the for you, where does the kind of reality of it and the myth and the kind of I quite like the juxtaposition of the of the reality with the kind of non-reality, and where those boundaries kind of fuse with one another.
Yeah, I love that as well. And what's interesting is some of the things on the, because it's an online exhibition as well, and some of the things on the website which are real actually seem more unreal than the things we've created for the exhibition. So, for instance, there's a clip from the BBC where DPAC, one of the disability rights movements, big ones of the last sort of 10 years, have come into the Houses of Parliament, and they interrupt a live broadcast of the BBC. And somebody looked at that who knew the exhibition wasn't real and said, "Oh, that's a really good fake. Yeah, you can tell it's a bit fake though. That usher from the House of Commons, she doesn't seem very real, And actually said, no, that one's real. This bit isn't real, but that bit is. So I think that kind of interweaving was sort of interesting, taking real things that had happened, and also there's a bit of a fog. There's sort of a sort of, I call it BI, before internet, and there's a fog of history before the internet came about. It's very hard to kind of confirm what was real and what wasn't real, and that's interesting, that you can play, and that was very deliberate, that positioning, before the internet came about, because people just can't get up Google and look it up. And there were other things we did, like, for instance, we put it on to Wikipedia, and it's so easy to get things onto Wikipedia. You'd be really surprised, but then a lot of people take Wikipedia as gospel, and since then, some real disabled activists who didn't like the exhibition have come on and edited the Wikipedia page, which I think is great. The fact that we've made up this movement, and then a real disability rights activism unit have kind of come in and started messing about and interfering with it, and it's provoked debate. I suppose the difficulty is, do you just then end up debating what's real and what isn't real, and questions of reality, rather than the issues at hand?
I think in a disabled person's world, that fusion, that kind of, the boundaries between, what's real and what isn't real is kind of like, it is real. It's kind of like, and when you tell stories about what experiences that you've had or things that you go through as a disabled person, the wider world kind of, looks and, kind of goes, oh, wow, I can't believe that somebody said or did or whatever to you, or So for me, I think this exhibition kind of really kind of, explores those notions, and I'm quite interested in the logo itself and how you came about to create that logo, and I think the idea of a logo is that it kind of it brings it creates a following, it creates a brand, and I'm quite interested in how you kind of came about to that point of that branding, and how you actually got it kind of merged into a lot of the photography and the imagery that you made.
Well, I mean, I really always knew it had to have sort of strong iconography from the outset, and that's one thing I was really keen to do. And really, I suppose it was inspired by, I think all armed resistance groups, going back and you examine all of them through history, they all have a certain set of tropes being established, and people who do activism kind of invest in those tropes, So actually, and they're quite strict, they're quite stringent. And one of them is the logo. One of them is having this sort of iconic kind of image. And I was really inspired by Extinction Rebellion, and I went and I've been down to the camps, and milled about and been out there and talked to people and taken lots of photographs of the Extinction Rebellion protests. Particularly the one, the big one in November, November 2019, which just kind of shut down the whole of central London, the camps there. And the one thing is just that image, you know, the egg timer. I thought it's really cool, the image. So I was working with a designer, you know, who's very, very clever, Sarah, and she helped me to come up with this idea of a kind of square box in a round hole, or a round hole is a square box, you know. And I really liked that idea, and we came up with this kind of graffiti version of it, which was sort of separated in the middle. And this is really cool because we were able to use it throughout posters, materials, everything graffiti. And I've got these old student photographs I'd taken as an art student in the 1990s, and we digitally altered them to put the logo into these. They were just of cityscapes and town centres in Birmingham and Sheffield and Newcastle for a project I did at college, and just put these little logos in. And we did a massive, which was really cool, a massive graffiti logo about 10 feet across when the exhibition opened at the Art House in Wakefield. And it's just, so this huge thing was looking out over the people of Wakefield, the red wall, Boris Johnson voting. People of Wakefield had this kind of mirror held up to them of activism, and I kind of liked that, you know.
I kind of think that, you know, for me, that, you know, kind of going back to my roots as a graphic designer, you know, in the late 80s, which is kind of when, you know, everybody was storming the Pebble Mill and all the rest of it, you know, at that time. So it's kind of, you know, kind of, it took me back, Justin. It took me back to that time. So do you think in the light of COVID and the effects that's had on disabled people globally, what do you think that the future holds for the exhibition of Reasonable Adjustment for the future? Will you expand it, tour it, add to it, reimagine it?
Well, it's interesting. I'm not sure where to go next with it, really, because I feel like I've done quite a lot. And the origins of the exhibition is because I'm a filmmaker, really. You know, I make films, TV programmes, and that's really kind of my stock in trade. But I did an art degree, and I was always interested in art and visual art, you know, and I'd made my own art, but I'd never sort of been properly commissioned or anything like I was for this by the Arts Council and Unlimited and everything. So the idea with this was I'd tell it as a story which couldn't be told as a film, you know, because I thought, how do I do this as a film? And it just didn't seem to work. You know, when you try to make a film, you immediately impose a kind of structure and a story and a kind of facade on something, and it takes away the reality. And I knew if this was going to be believable, it would need to be, you know, presented as an exhibition, presented as facts rather than presented as a narrative. It just didn't work. So, but having said that, it's kind of evolved now. And originally we opened as a physical exhibition. I was really pleased with that. And then we toured for a few weeks, and then it got shut down by COVID. It was meant to be at the Attenborough Arts Centre in Leicester, and it was there for about 3 days before COVID came in and shut it down. And so I had to rework it. And you know, I was lucky enough to get some more funding from the Arts Council to turn it into an online exhibition. And that opened this year at the South Bank Centre's Unlimited Festival, which was great. And actually, the strange thing is, lots of people saw it. I think we had like 20,000 hits over that weekend on Facebook. And the whole time it was in Wakefield, I think less than 1,000 people saw it. So it just goes to show, you know, really maybe something like this, where you're trying to engage with people and you're trying to create a bit of a movement, is actually better in another format, strangely. And now I'm kind of thinking, yeah, maybe, you know, I'd love to do it again physically, the exhibition, and you know, rather than showing one burnt out wheelchair, I can show a pile of them, you know, and do things like that. And there are a few really good gallery spaces, you know, that I've got my eye on, that I'd love to do that. But I think there'll be a huge backlog of artists trying to get into galleries. And, you know, as a kind of fairly new artist, I think it's going to be difficult for me to do that. And one of the things I'm thinking about and talking to a few people about is actually going back and doing it as a film. Because now I've been through the process of telling the story as an exhibition, I think it could be a film, and I'm really interested in the way people have responded to it as well, and how I can engage with those people. So there's this real movement, right, who like have hijacked it. They've gone on Wikipedia, they've sort of we did a big Q&A for the South Bank Centre, and they hijacked it and started bombarding messages on the Zoom chat. They've done all kinds of things, you know. They even sort of tweeted my agent and weird stuff like this, you know, because saying this isn't true. And they got really angry about the fact it isn't true. And I set up a website so that they could a web chat so that they could engage a public forum on the website, and they've been doing that quite actively. But I thought what would be really interesting is go back to them and engage them and go and interview them as part of a documentary. So then the narrative becomes about the falsifying the truth and how we all live in our different realities. And who knows, these people might not be real. I've never met them. All I've seen is them as a digital presence. And that's something really interesting to kind of look at is, are they real? You know, they might not be. Some of them have names that sound a bit made up to me. And it might be another artist, you know, it could be Aaron Williamson or somebody like that kind of coming in and pranking me. And then it gets really interesting, doesn't it? You know, the depth of deceits and falsehoods. And it's really interesting to examine all of that in a post-truth culture.
Yeah, so I think that wraps it up, Justin. Thanks for the chat.
Thank you. It's really good to see you, and thanks for your portrait as well, which still hangs on the wall.
Thank you to Tanya and Justin. And you can see Justin's fascinating and thought-provoking exhibition at www.reasonableadjustmentexhibition.com. And thank you to all our special guests on the first edition of Inside Outside In. We hope you enjoyed the first instalment. Join us next time for more artist stories and interviews. And if you're interested in finding out more about our charity, please visit our website at www.outsidein.org.uk. Finally, we're ending with a beautiful rendition of the song Allerseelen by Richard Strauss, sung by Bebo to commemorate those who lost their lives in the pandemic. The song hopes for a happy reunion in the future when we will be reunited with loved ones again, as once in May. Goodbye for now, and thanks for listening. Take good care, everyone.
The number of people who have sadly lost their lives stands at 40,261 on the latest information.
Lass uns wieder von der Liebe You have been listening to Inside Outside In, a podcast by the arts charity Outside In. Audiovisual editing was by Idil Boskert at IC Image. Additional sound was by John Bartman, and the podcast was produced by Matthew Forbes-Dale. Thanks to Grayson Perry, Curtis Brown, Bebo and Brian Keeley, Corinne, Dominic Bennett, Anne Tarpey, Amanda Sutton and the Venture Arts team, Justin Edgar, Tanya Raab Weber, BSL interpreter Nadia Nadaraja, our team, board and trustees, artists, friends, patrons and supporters, Danielle Hodson, Jack Howson at Reduced Listening, and the Outside In Artists Advisory Group. Outside In would also like to thank Arts Council England, Paul Hamlin Foundation, John Ellerman Foundation, the George Danat Trust, Garfield Weston Foundation, Art Fund, the Roddick Foundation, and the Linbury Trust.